Although Yu-Gi-Oh! Is best known as the card game played by the characters in the show, the initial premise of the series was never intended to revolve around duel monsters. In fact, when Takahashi started the manga, he was unsure of how his vision would go over with readers. In an attempt to test the waters, he introduced a wider variety of games in which Yami Yugi could show off his superiority. It's one of the reasons why he would be known as the King of Games, rather than the King of Card Games. With that in mind, the possibility of duel monsters not catching on was quite real. So, as a fun thought experiment, let's take a look at what games could have taken its place, and what could have been associated with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Name in perpetuity. Again, while we can all picture Yugi and friends wielding their duel discs, decks equipped, the series wasn't initially about card games. In the original manga, duel monsters didn't come up until chapter 9, where we were introduced to the iconic Blue Eyes White Dragon. I will now be performing the Seto Kaiba enunciation of that word. Blue Eyes White Dragon! Sorry, that was for me. At that point, the rules had yet to be fleshed out, and players were essentially just slamming bigger monsters into smaller ones. While I'm fairly sure that Takahashi saw this as another one of his games of the week, it still introduced a few important things. For one, alongside Blue Eyes White Dragon, we met the main character's bitter rival, Seto Kaiba. More importantly, what I think set this game apart from the ones before it were the visual materialization of the monsters depicted on the cards, with beasts and dragons coming to life when played. It's such a simple idea, but it really allowed Takahashi to flex his monster designs, which I believe outclasses human designs. However, even with readers' attention peaked, the series didn't immediately pivot into duel monsters, and many different games were shown before its reintroduction in Chapter 27. Even after its return, the card game still wouldn't take the reins until Duelist Kingdom started up. From there, duel monsters became synonymous with the name Yu-Gi-Oh! Like any good idea, there is still a good chance that nothing comes of it. So let's assume for the sake of the video that duel monsters didn't catch on. In such a world, which other games would have taken its place? To answer this question, it's worth exploring what exactly made duel monsters the most viable candidate. For one, although Yu-Gi-Oh! Was usually known for its darker themes, the show's first arc is so dramatically different from everything done in future arcs, with Yami Yugi's body count being uncomfortably high. In cases where his opponent didn't end up dead, mental scarring seemed to be the best alternative in our hero's eyes. Now, my point here isn't that the card game doesn't get dark at times. Rather, my point is that you want the audience to be able to experience an activity without bringing harm to themselves. As such, most of the physical activity-oriented challenges are immediately thrown out the window, as you want your game to be easily and comfortably played. The second thing that set duel monsters apart was that there were variety between games. With Yu-Gi-Oh! Being one of the biggest card games out right now, and with the countless number of cards printed, combined with your everyday factor of luck and chance, it's safe to say that two duels will never play out the same way. Sure, the outcome may be the same, like Yugi winning every time, obviously, but the game's proceeding will always be different. Finally, I believe that the game in question must be marketable as a product. This might sound obvious, but at the end of the day, one of the reasons that Yu-Gi-Oh! Continues to live on is because new content is always being released in the form of shows, movies, and games. This entices people into trying the card game, which generates revenue, which in turn causes more content to be produced. Yu-Gi-Oh! Could have been a series about the greatest poker player, but simply selling poker cards wouldn't offer the same exclusivity that a branded game allows. So, with all that in mind, what suitable replacements do we have at hand? So aside from Duel Monsters, there have been a number of other games, cutely referred to as shadow games. Let's take a look at each and see what we can work with. The very first game is called Money and Knife, and is played by stabbing a stack of money laying on the player's hands with a sharp knife. It is essentially a game of chicken to see who can pick up more money without hurting themselves. Although potentially a fun game, I can't imagine it going over well with parents, and I don't believe it's particularly replayable. Finally, I don't really see how we can market a knife and a stack of cash, so this one is a pass. The next game, based around dice, is also a no-go. While not difficult to play, there's not much in terms of variety, and again, while we can sell stylized dice, the dice market is oversaturated as is. As someone with a noisy younger sibling, the Silence game is definitely one that I've played for some peace of mind. However, while easy to play, I can't imagine how this could be spiced up, nor can I find a way to sell this, so that's also a no-go. Again, another one that's easy to execute but that doesn't quite fulfill the other categories is the one-finger battle, which you might think is thumb wrestling, but no, it's even less engaging than that. Following up is a variation on the pulling the tablecloth with dinnerware on it performance. I can't imagine this would be a game that could be repeated or sold. Next is air hockey, with what is ostensibly a bomb. Now, as far as I know, there isn't a successful hockey series out there, so I highly doubt an air hockey story would fare much better. Then we have some filler games like a weird puzzle game, cute but failing in multiple respects. Scorpion and Sneaker is a fun one, as players take turns grabbing coins out of a sneaker where a scorpion is hiding. Another game of chicken, if you will. While I question categories 1 and 2, in terms of marketability, I think it'd be funny as hell to have collabs with various sneaker companies for merchandise. Anyway, jokes aside, yeah, this probably won't work. Then we have the Taser game, which only works with anime logic. One of the rarer games, not played by Yami Yugi but by Shadi, consisted of a series of ethics questions alongside an omniscient demonic judgmental beast. Cool in concept, but impossible in real life, so we're gonna have to move along. A brief side note on Shadi, I'm starting to think he doesn't play games because each one he introduces just isn't feasible. Be it escape room-esque labyrinths, a game of weird Sudoku and a weird spin on the trust fall, all cool for mystical beings, but not so much for young Billy and Bobby over here. Well, it's starting to look bleak, and we're running out of options, but our next candidates actually have the most potential, so here we go. Digipet Battle was essentially Tamagotchi fused with Digimon. Capsule Monsters was a mix of Warhammer and chess, and finally we have Virtual Versus, which was the Yu-Gi-Oh's Universe fighting video game of choice. Having the smallest showcase in the series, Virtual Versus starts our trio of candidates. Shown in Chapter 25, this was an arcade game where two opposing players picked characters to fight against each other, like our world's Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. The controls looked similar to real-life arcade booths, and we even knew the rules of either KOing the opponent or having more HP when the timer ran out. While even within the chapter it wasn't the focal point, it does serve as our first noteworthy game as it's easily playable. The fights played can be incredibly varied and unique, with the number of combinations growing exponentially depending on the size of the roster. It is also technically marketable as Konami, the company currently handling Yu-Gi-Oh!, already makes arcade machines and publishes their own fighting games. So having their own flavored fighting game wouldn't be out of the picture. However, if Duel Monsters didn't have a strong impact early on, then it's no wonder why Virtual Versus isn't spoken of at all. Not only was the game uncreative, but Takahashi didn't even bother showing what the roster would look like. The author chose to make the only fight depicted an homage between Bruce Lee and Ryu, a character from Street Fighter. Finally, by the time this chapter came out in '97, Konami was already comfortably established in the arcade market as an international distributor since 1978. In Chapter 21, we were introduced to Digipets, toys that allowed kids to own digital pets that could be raised and evolved. They could also interact with other Digipets, either peacefully or aggressively, thanks to the connecting pads on each device. We've seen similar products succeed, whether it be the more raising-focused equivalent of Tamagotchi or the more fighting-focused lookalike of Digimon. With the highlight of the product being the digital pet, it would be easy to create new little avatars. Compound that with a decent battle system akin to Pokemon, and we may have a shining star here. Of course, that would be if Digipets weren't already a nod to those products. With Tamagotchi coming out in '96, a full year before Yu-Gi-Oh's debut, it would be hard to argue that Takahashi didn't try to make his own spin on the product. Even though we know the formula could work, no one wants to be the store brand to the name brand, and I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh's spin on the toy would have always played second fiddle. Alright guys, close your eyes and picture this. An anime series where Yami Yugi goes around with a capsule launcher. He can shoot capsules to summon monsters to fight with, and let's let him be able to merge with those monsters. Wait, oh, hold on. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Yep, hello? Yes. Wait, what? What do you mean that's already a thing? You're trying to tell me that they made an entire season for capsule monsters? Oh, no. Oh, no. While anyone and everyone jokes about capsule monsters, can we be honest here? If Duel Monsters wasn't the thing that caught on, capsule monsters would have probably been the series' shining beacon. It does fit our criteria, less so the version in the anime, but more like the original capsule monsters shown in the manga. Played by Yami Yugi and Mokuba, the game resembled a simplified version of Warhammer. There are a variety of monsters, and the figurines that represent them could easily be marketable. We know that Warhammer is a popular pastime, their minis sell like hotcakes, and anime figurines scratch that very specific itch, so a game combining both could make sense. The game allows for a variety of decisions to be made, and as such, each encounter can feel unique, and the audience can partake in this very same activity. Although the answer was probably obvious to you, I think this exercise showed us how special it is that Duel Monsters was able to appear and, more importantly, succeed. Takahashi threw many ideas at us, and there exists a timeline where Yu-Gi-Oh! Became the series where you tune in every week to see the random game that the writer thought up. Instead, this is now one of the most important card games on the market, with some of the most dedicated fans, some of which even had a hand in making this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Be sure to tune in to our podcast on Spotify and check back here for a new video. We'll see you next time.